we're joined now by the Minister of State for Finance, Jayant Sinha, speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18. I can see there's an air of happiness here in North Block, and clearly your powers of persuasion seem to have worked as far as the Reserve Bank is concerned. I won't use the word pressure, and hence I'm using the word power of persuasion, because the governor had made it very clear in the December policy that he will wait to see what the trends on inflation look like, and he would wait to see what the data on fiscal consolidation looks like. And that gave the street the sense that if there is an out-of-turn rate cut or out-of-policy rate cut, it would perhaps happen post the budget and ahead of the April cut. A fortnight ahead of the next credit policy, which is on the 3rd of February, the Reserve Bank decides to act. Is this because of the sustained campaign of North Block to get a rate cut?
Shereen, I think it's all about the power of leadership. And in fact, as you know, we have been sent here to do the people's business. And the people's business is to get the economy moving, to transform the economy, and to give a better life for all of our people. And we've been leading in that regard. If you look at the unprecedented set of measures that we've undertaken, perhaps more so than any government, and I would say perhaps even more so than the government of 1991, with the IMF gun to the head, where they had to liberalize and open the economy up. What we've done in sector after sector, whether it is in coal, whether it's in mining, whether it is with GST, whether it's with the Planning Commission, whether it's what we're doing in the banking reform, while at the same time pursuing prudent fiscal policies, saying that we are committed to sound economic management, a fiscal roadmap of 4.1%, 3.6%, 3%. That's how we have led, Shereen. And when we lead, then obviously all the other institutions follow, whether it's the Reserve Bank of India.
So the credit for this out-of-policy rate cut should be given to North Block?
I think the credit should go to the political leadership, as our Honourable Prime Minister and
you're very clear about that.
Finance
Credit
Minister
should go to the political leadership.
I mean, you have to understand the institutional environment in our democracy, Shereen. You have to understand the institutional environment. In the institutional environment, Parliament is supreme, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet are supreme, and we have to do the work that we have to do to move the economy forward. The RBI has a singular purpose, which is to pursue monetary policy, to ensure that the financial system is sound. And if we put the right conditions in place, obviously then the RBI as a professional institution will follow suit. And I said in some of my previous interviews that the RBI, of course, is an extraordinarily competent and professional organization. They're data-driven, they're fact-based, and if the data and the facts present themselves appropriately, they'll take appropriate action, which is what they've done.
They've taken appropriate action, and I know, because we reported this just yesterday, that the North Block and the Finance Ministry believes that the Reserve Bank Governor should not wait till the 3rd of February. But really, a fortnight ahead of the credit policy, would it really have mattered so much as far as the investment sentiment or pickup in the investment cycle is concerned?
No, I think it's very important to set the stage, and the reason why this particular action has been so hotly anticipated and then subject to so much attention from people like yourselves and other media outlets is because that it's not just a rate cut. It is really the turn of the cycle. And that's really what's important here. What we've demonstrated now is that the economic momentum that's picking up, the investments that are coming in, the confidence that's been built on the fiscal policies that we are pursuing, the commitment that we've demonstrated to economic reform, that signal has now been fully amplified by the RBI in terms of the rate cut, and so the economy has moved through an inflection point. That's why it's so profoundly important.
So let me ask you this. What is now the expectation as far as the 3rd of February is concerned, and then the next credit policy? Ahead of the budget and post the budget, what is the expectation that the Finance Ministry and the political leadership has as far as rate cuts are concerned?
Well, we have a job to do for the people of India, and the job that we have to do for the people of India is to continue to position the economy, to create millions and millions of new jobs, to get to that growth trajectory that we've talked about, which is a 7 to 8% growth trajectory, which is non-inflationary and is sustainable from an environmental and an ecological perspective. To do that, as I've said many times before, what we really have to do is we have to build India's productive capacity. If we build India's productive capacity and work through the supply side bottlenecks that we've been facing, the near balance sheet recession that we've had, with the debt overhang that our banks have had, if we work through those serious and difficult problems, then of course, as I've said, we lead and others will follow.
So how much would you like the Reserve Bank, or do you believe that the stage is now set at least for a 50 basis points to a 75 basis point cut? Do you believe that the policies that the government has undertaken, where inflation currently is at, where crude prices are, do you believe that we are on course to at least see between a 50 to a 75 basis point cut?
the data will tell us. So we have to wait to see how all these trends play out, and what is achievable with respect to investments, and obviously working through the difficult challenges we have on the NPAs. So as long as we work through all of that, I think the rate cuts will follow suit.
Let me ask you now, because we've got the budget coming up next month, and the sense one gets is, and this is something that the finance minister has stated several times, including to us just last week, that 4.1% is sacrosanct as far as the fiscal deficit number is concerned. The roadmap that you had laid out, do you believe and do you feel confident on the back of where you see tax collections, where you see global factors, where you see domestic factors, that you are going to be able to maintain the fiscal deficit target, not just 4.1%, but the roadmap that you've set out for yourself?
No, those are exactly the right questions, Shereen. And the fact is that while the numbers are always achievable, right, and we've seen in the past how those numbers were achieved, it's not really just a question of achieving the numbers. The quality of the numbers, the integrity of the accounting that stands behind them, those are equally, if not more important, because you can rip through the numbers very quickly and establish what is actually happening with the economy and the fiscal policies that we're pursuing. So it's very important for us to be able to achieve that roadmap that you just laid out in the highest quality way possible, and that's really what we are working towards.
So as far as the 4.1% fiscal deficit number is concerned, you're short as far as tax is concerned, you're short on disinvestment as of now, and it looks daunting that you are going to be able to come close or achieve the disinvestment target that you've set for yourself. What happens then? Cut back as far as expenditure is concerned, and then this business of trying to rev up the economy by pushing investment, especially on infrastructure and so on and so forth. Should those hopes be put to rest for now? You're asking me to talk about the budget before the budget? I'm asking you to give me a sense of what we should expect. You'll have to wait and see. I think we've all been quite clear, whether it is the Honorable Finance Minister, whether it's the Chief Economic Advisor or myself, in many of our comments as to what fundamentally we are trying to achieve, not just with the budget, because the budget is just one milestone in a continuous process of working. No, I'm not talking about the reform agenda, but I'm talking about an expenditure cutback at this point in time, because as you're saying, the imperative is really to get the economy growing. The imperative at this point in time is to kickstart the investment cycle. The hope is that the government perhaps is going to take leadership even as far as that role is concerned. Is that hope going to be put to rest, at least for now, given the fiscal constraints? Well, you'll have to wait and see for that. We are working hard on the budget, and we hope to be able to answer all those questions at that point. Okay, let me now talk to you about some of the other crucial reforms, and the hope once again is that the budget will in fact stoke those growth measures. Manufacturing, SOPs related to manufacturing, SEZs, tax-related issues, MAT, DDT and so on and so forth. Should we be hopeful of significant measures to address some of these tax-related concerns to boost manufacturing? Well, I would answer that question in terms of first principles. What are we really trying to accomplish, whether it is manufacturing or whether it's infrastructure? Really, there are 3 or 4 important aspects to that. The first and most important aspect of that is that the infrastructure has to be there to support manufacturing and to support the natural growth of the economy. So we are taking a number of very important measures, starting with power, where we are really looking to build up the infrastructure and to be able to establish the platform for manufacturing growth and so on. So that's one very important aspect. The infrastructure has to be there. Number 2 aspect that we have to put in place is we have to ensure that new investment comes in, whether it's in manufacturing or in infrastructure. So we have to provide new investment coming in, and we know what the situation is right now with respect to balance sheets of the large business groups and so on. So we effectively have to find new sources for that equity capital to come in and get new projects started. So that's the second very important aspect that we're working on. The third very important aspect that we're working on, and where we think in fact that you're going to see an immediate sort of movement in terms of the economy and stimulus for the economy, is in the stalled projects. And there you know that we've put a very significant effort through the Prime Minister's office to monitor those 18 lakh crores of stalled projects, as well as taking appropriate policy action, whether it's through the coal ordinance or whether it's the land acquisition ordinance, to actually get those projects moving as well. So that's the third aspect, which is to be able to deal with these stalled projects. And then the fourth is, which of course today heralds, is a much more benign
rate environment. And because once that liquidity starts to come in, and you find that, you know, the pressure on the income statement it comes down because of, you know, paying less as far as debt is concerned, then you are in a position, in fact, to free up much of the balance sheet and income statement pressure that we are facing and really move the economy forward.
Let me address the fourth issue first, and I know that there's been meetings with bankers. In fact, there is one slated for later this afternoon, later this evening as well. Are you nudging banks to transmit the rate cut that's been announced by the Reserve Bank as aggressively as well? Because the sense one gets is that there is pressure or, again, powers of persuasion being used to get banks to at least provide for a 50 basis point lending rate cut.
You know, the Ministry of Finance North Block does not nudge anyone. We have lots and lots of independent institutions who are very capable, very competent to make the right decisions. Our job really is to put in place the enabling environment to be facilitators. And as we do so, as we lead in that regard, as I said, appropriate actions across the market economy will happen, which is what will happen, I'm sure.
Well, you know, public sector banks are banks that you lead. So how much are you likely to ask them to cut rates by? Is it likely to be in the vicinity of 50 basis points, which is what we're given to understand is the communication that the Finance Ministry has informally sort of chatted with the banks about?
No, we are shareholders, and we've been very clear in saying that the banks have to make commercial decisions on the basis of their own commercial logic, and we've in fact put it out in writing that they have the operating autonomy and they should exercise the operating autonomy when it comes to making those decisions. And that's how it should be. You know, that's how a market economy works. And you know, I'm very hopeful that they'll take into account all of these commercial factors and make the right decisions.